Welcome to FitBody Lifestyle, the show where we dive deep into the world of fitness, health, business, relationships, and the art of living a balanced life. I'm Jamie.
And I'm Greg, and we're here to give you the benefit of our experiences in the fitness and bodybuilding industry, the corporate world, running a business, personal development, and building healthy relationships.
Whether you're sweating it out in the gym, hustling in your business, or seeking balance in your everyday life, you're in the right place.
So lace up those sneakers and grab that water bottle, and let's get ready to transform our minds, our bodies, and our lives.
Hello, everybody, and welcome back to another episode of FitBody Lifestyle. And today in our conversation series, we have a very special guest. And never let it be said that we will not go that extra mile. So we have Coach Jessica Quillian, and the extra mile is we made sure that she was actually pregnant as we talk about pregnancy and training and nutrition during pregnancy. So thank you for being pregnant for this episode. It really does help to show that, hey, it's not just do as I say, it's do as I do. And you've got a lot of experience in this.
I do.
Well, and Jessica's an incredible athlete on her, on her own. And, actually after her first child was back on stage within, 11 months?
11 months, yeah.
Yeah, so she really kind of set the standard, but it has really carved out her niche in terms of working with athletes that are going through the desire to get pregnant, and then what do they need to do to, optimize that, and, and through the pregnancy, postpartum, so your level of experience and what you've got to share, we're really excited to allow our listeners to hear about and learn about. So,
and before we get to all that, tell everybody a little bit about you. Tell us the Jessica Quillian story.
I'm on baby number 3, and baby number 3 was not planned.
I was going to say, surprise! We were starting prep.
we were getting ready to prep for 2024, but we're doing a different type of prep right now. I've been with FitBody Fusion since 2013, so almost 11 years now. My son is 7, my daughter is going to be 2 in July, and then I have baby 3 due in June.
And then we're just going to roll right into number 4, or
no, we're done. We're done. We're absolutely done. But yeah, I've competed since 2011 and have done, I don't even know how many shows, lots of national shows, gotten close to my pro card, stopped to have babies, and just kind of have lived my life throughout my competition and mom and coaching experiences.
I love that too, that you can speak to that, because, competing's not for just certain people.
Right.
You as a mother, you've actually competed and done better than you did prior to having
100%.
kids.
100%.
So
yeah, definitely. So I'm seeing what each kid, I guess, now I'm seeing what I'm more capable of. It just adds to the plate. I
know before I had kids, there was kind of this perception of, once you had kids, it was,
you're done.
Yeah, you're kind of, you were done. And this is so exciting to me. And I'm so glad we get to share this, because, I think as women, we now know that we can have our kids and still pursue our fitness goals or whatever goals that we have in life. It's not, it's just a part. It becomes a part of the things we do rather than an either or sort of situation.
Yeah, absolutely. I completely agree. I before I had my second, I was like, I have to have my pro card before I'm 35. I need to do this. I have to do this. And for some reason in my mind, it was like I had this, like the time was going to be cut off if I hit 35 and I hadn't had my pro card yet. And I was going to have to stop, and it would be different after 2 kids. That's not the case. I turned 35, was like 2 spots from my pro card, got pregnant, wanted to come back, got pregnant again. But now I'm like, okay, this is cool, because I'm 37 now, and I think that where I am now in my life and where I have been competing, having a third baby, I feel like that timeline is just gone for me. Like, it doesn't matter. I know I can come back to the stage whenever. And I only have a short window to really have kids, for me at least. So I guess through my experiences, I've just lost that cutoff. There's no cutoff. You just have to learn how to have longevity in the sport, I guess, be healthy. Like, that's something that I'm really, really a big advocate for too, is just that longevity.
And Jess, I do think that's a really good topic, and maybe a part of a question of this is, I know we've had conversations about this, and I know that as you transition from athlete to coach, part of that timeline that you would put yourself on, that artificial timeline, was the belief that I need to be an IFBB in order to be an effective coach.
That too, yeah.
You have demolished that, and that's a myth. Okay, and I'll
sure.
straight up, that's a myth. A good coach is a good coach.
Right.
And qualifications you always want to look at qualifications for a coach, definitely. And you also want to look at their effectiveness and how they're coaching their athletes. Are they compassionate? Are they going to hear and listen to you? Those are qualities that you possess in droves. I mean, you are such a good listener. You are so empathetic. You are so compassionate, and you're very knowledgeable. And you have carved out this niche, as Jamie talked about, in this pregnancy space, without having IFBB Pro behind your name.
Yet.
Fair.
We have the jacket. We're getting ready to embroider it when it's time.
Yes, it's happening.
and I think that's kind of what you're talking about here is that there's no more timeline, and part of that is being comfortable in your own skin. But talk a little bit about that. If that's, I don't know that I framed a really good question, but maybe the question is this: is how did you mentally adjust to the I need to be on a timeline, the desire to get that IFBB Pro card as some way to validate your coaching expertise, and then embracing this other aspect of your knowledge and your skill set to be a great coach?
Yeah, I think when I was younger, like even early 30s, when I started competing in my late 20s, I felt like 35 was old. So we'll just start there. I was like, 35 is old. I'm going to be done competing by the time I'm 35. So I think I had that in my mind where I was going to be done competing by the time I was 35. I was going to have my pro card by a certain amount of time. And that also, from where I was when I first started coaching, I didn't have a ton of experience competing. I didn't have a ton of experience coaching. And I think my experiences on stage at the national level, not getting my pro card, and still being able to coach top level athletes. I mean, my clients always place. I mean, it's maybe 9 times out of 10 they place. And so each time I was able to get a client on stage successfully, it was like I kept validating that feeling of not needing my pro card. So what am I trying to say with this? Turning, like, if you think about it from like a show perspective, so I'm thinking about, okay, if I got my pro card, the next day I don't change as a person. I'm the same person, So I feel like each experience I've had on stage has only made me a better coach. I don't need that title. I want that title because I think it's fun and I want to work towards it, but that is not going to add to my knowledge.
I love that so much, because some of the best coaches, including you in the industry, aren't pros. And it's funny when I feel like sometimes when people are new to the industry, they think, oh, this person looks good, they're placing well, I'm going to hire them to coach me.
They don't necessarily.
Right. And because you're a successful athlete yourself does not necessarily translate into being a great coach,
right.
and vice versa.
Right.
So, I think that that's a really good point is, finding somebody, because I know how invested you are in your athletes. And that's a huge part of coaching is like that attention to detail, the investment. I know that, a lot of additional educational certifications and things like that. You're constantly learning, growing, and going that extra mile to make yourself an even better coach. And that to me is what I admire so much about what I see you constantly achieving.
I feel like I just want to learn and grow more and more and more. And that comes from my experiences as a coach and the different clients that I get. And now, I have more and more. I get all the pregnant athletes. They're always sent to me or they switch to me, so that's really something that I'm
we switched a client of ours over to you.
Just recently. I've several I have. And because you understand it and this is what I tell the athletes that I have, that have switched, is that, if I want some advice on how to handle somebody in these situations, I'm going to you. You're the expert. And so I think it's really great having, people that do really focus on certain areas so that, you can help people on just another level. You can educate them on another level. You can help them when they hit certain roadblocks or don't know how, even from an emotional standpoint.
Oh yeah. For sure.
to get through
100%. 100%. I have a handful of postpartum, a handful of pregnant clients right now. And I feel like since my daughter Heidi, she's 19 months, I think, around there, I feel like my postpartum experience with her is still so present and like current for me that even though I'm pregnant again, my clients that are going through postpartum right now, colicky babies, no sleep, like everything that comes with postpartum, I can relate to that so much right now. Because Hunter, he's 7. So it's like I've been kind of removed. I was removed from that for a while until I had Heidi. And now she's, like I said, 19 months. Postpartum is still pretty current for me in my brain, as well as pregnancy. So those clients going through postpartum right now, I can relate to that and give them suggestions on like what worked for me, what didn't work for me, and then as well as the pregnant clients. So.
And Jess, I really want to hit on that because you hit on a central theme that I'm always thinking about, and it relates to the IFBB Pro title.
Right.
And I do know that a lot of people coach and they coach with a kind of a singular mindset of this worked for me, it will work for you.
Right.
And that's and I do think sometimes getting that pro status may be, hey, this is what made my success, so this will work for you, which I think is very short-sighted and very not really client service oriented, because every client's different.
Right.
I've seen you coach, and you just said it, and I really want to hit on that, is that you're focused on what is right for that particular client. Yes, you will share your experience, but your purpose and your search is to find what is going to work for this client.
Right.
It may not be what you did.
Exactly.
It may not be what you experienced, but it is going to be something that's specific to that client. So how do you go about that distinction of making sure that you're not imposing your experience as the only experience and then taking into account the needs that client has expressed to you?
I think what I do is I will share my experience, but then I'll also kind of share experiences of other people that either my friends, my sisters, people that I know that have gone through postpartum, what has worked for them and what hasn't worked for them. And, you know, when I do client check-in calls with a lot of my postpartum clients. We'll talk about, okay, how was your sleep? You know, rough, not very good. But we'll talk through suggestions or my suggestions and what they've tried, what they haven't tried. And then sometimes things click and then sometimes things don't. So I just feel like it's feeling the client out and seeing where they are. And just, it's like trial and error sometimes, even with postpartum clients, even figuring out babies. You know, that's not something that all of us talk about very often, but I'm like, every baby's different. I had that conversation yesterday.
Every baby is different.
You know, what worked for my babies doesn't necessarily work for other babies. And I just have to have that conversation with them. And then I think more important than me giving my suggestions to them is just them having somebody that listens to them. Mm-hmm. They need someone to listen to and lean on, especially postpartum. So I think that is kind of, hopefully that answered the question, but
I think it did.
Okay.
Yeah, I think it did. And I think that being present for your clients, I mean, that's really what you're describing and listening. I mean, it's as coach, I think everybody's thinking that you're just telling people what to do all the time.
That's not the case.
But a lot of times it's helping people. And it is always reminds me of the biggest joke, and how many psychologists does it take to change a light bulb, which I told you is none, because the light bulb has to want to change.
Right.
When you allow somebody that space for them to express themselves, talk, know that they have an empathetic and compassionate person on the other side, oftentimes they can get to their own conclusions. Yeah. And when they do, those sometimes are the best solutions for that person. Mm-hmm. Right? It's
more than just, like you said, telling somebody what to do. This is how I do it, so this is how you should do it. I'm not shitting on people here, you know?
Inside joke, yeah.
But I think back to like when I first started coaching, and going back to your point of, you know, this worked for me, so this is going to work for you. I used to think that. I used to have that mentality because I hadn't grown as a coach. I hadn't had experiences and I hadn't grown. So now I feel like I've grown so much in the time that I've been a coach that I am willing to try different things with people and see what works, what doesn't work. Macros might not work for people every time, you know, especially pregnant. When people are pregnant, the nutrition is crazy. It's all over the place. I can't expect people to be like rigid like they are when they're prepping for a show. That's a whole different ball game is the nutrition.
Absolutely. And some people can and some people can't.
Exactly. I couldn't.
Yeah.
It's just
there's
not
nausea,
for me.
there's aversions,
right,
and all those things. And I know we wanted to talk about, in this episode specifically training nutrition,
right,
and the weight gain that comes along with pregnancy. So you want to jump into training first and like talk a little bit about like what changes, and even leading into pregnancy, if somebody's getting ready to, they know that that's what they're trying for. Let us know, kind of what do you see and what do you recommend for a lot of clients as they're going through this process.
Are pregnant women allowed to train?
No. Just kidding.
Didn't think so.
Not me. No, I'm just kidding. It's one of those things where it depends and everybody's different. So
I love that every question starts with it depends.
It depends. First trimester, I mean, I guess even before somebody's pregnant, they can still train how they've been training. For the most part, I feel like a lot of people might know that, but maybe not. And then when I have somebody that's first trimester, sometimes I'll switch them over to first trimester workouts that I have built for clients. And sometimes they're okay sticking to what they've been doing. It's about listening to the body. There are a lot of changes in the first trimester, but not a lot of you don't feel a lot of the physical heaviness of the pelvis and things like that as you get further into second and third trimester. So I feel like first trimester is just feeling the client out, seeing where they are. Each week when they check in with me, I ask them how their training is going and if they have any pain, any heaviness in the pelvic floor, things like that I want them to be aware of, because I feel like a lot of people are not aware of that. I was not aware of these kinds of things in my first pregnancy at all. And then, as we get further into second trimester, third trimester, I might have to switch things up a little bit. Maybe the client has to decrease the weight, decrease the amount of days that they're in the gym, more rest days. It varies so much from pregnancy to pregnancy and client to client. I mean, my experience, first pregnancy, I was in the gym until 30 weeks. I didn't know very much about, I didn't know then what I know now, but that's okay. And then I went on bed rest with my son at 30 weeks for 6 weeks, and then I went back to the gym, had him the next week. I don't really know what I did or didn't do for that, because I just wasn't aware of my body and the changes of my body, and I think that that's really helpful for what I've gone through and what I'm going through for my clients I'm someone they can lean on when they have questions about the physical changes and whatnot. So I have to listen to each client as they go through their pregnancy and change things as we go. My second pregnancy, I was doing the same workouts that I was doing, I guess, pre-pregnancy, and I wasn't having any issues. And I think at 23 weeks, I was put on bed rest, and I was on bed rest for 17 weeks, the entire pregnancy. This pregnancy, I made it in the clear. I'm not on bed rest, but my training is different. I am aware of what feels good and what doesn't feel good in my body. So first trimester, I was actually taking it really, really easy. I was training every other week just to make sure I wasn't put on bed rest. Now I'm training probably 5 days a week, depending on how my body feels. And some days, if I'm too tired, I don't go to the gym. And I relay this information to my clients too. I'm like, it's okay, especially competitors, because I feel like competitors are a different animal. They have that type A, they're like a type A personality. Like, I can't miss the gym. I'm like, it is okay. I had this conversation with one of my clients, I think one of the clients that switched from you guys to me. I had this conversation with her yesterday. I, was telling her, it's okay to miss the gym and let your body rest. Morning sickness, exhaustion, you don't, just let your body rest. It's okay. This is such a small window of your life that it's okay.
Can I add one thing to this really quick, because you're making me think about this, is that that's okay for a non-pregnant athlete too, right? I mean, we talk about this all the time, is listen to your body.
Yes.
And I think that with pregnancy, and I don't know, because I'm obviously not experienced with this. I've never been
You're
pregnant.
not. Are you sure?
But I do think that that one of the thoughts that can creep into a pregnant competitor's mind is that timeline of I'm losing this time, and so I need to make every workout count, because I can't lose any traction from the gym or from my physical progress. And what we know about that and non-pregnant people doing that the same is that if you're not listening to your body, if you go to the gym when you are exhausted, when you're compromised, I'll just put compromised, you are exposing yourself to a lot.
Yeah.
You're exposing yourself to injury. You're exposing yourself in a pregnancy's context to complications. You're exposing yourself to things that are not necessary. Competing is never going to be about 1 day, 1 week, 1 month. The stage isn't going anywhere.
No.
So and I think that's what you're talking about, Jess. So how do you deal with it? How did you deal with it yourself? But also, how do you deal with it with clients who have that kind of I must be? And you started talking about it. I didn't mean to interrupt, but
okay.
yeah.
I use myself as an example because I think a lot of women are worried about, oh my God, I'm going to lose muscle. I'm going to lose this, lose that. You do lose a little bit while you're pregnant, but it's about just maintaining that physical lifestyle, just maintaining some sort of physical movement here and there. But when I have clients that are just literally going down the deep end, I'm like, listen, I was on bed rest for 17 weeks. I literally wasn't even allowed to do yoga. Like my doctor was like, no stretching, no yoga. Just get out of bed and go eat something and come back to bed. I was like, okay.
Is that how your doctor actually sounds?
That's exactly.
Okay, all right.
Your doctor's got an unusual
No, she's
voice.
great.
Yeah. Sounds like a character on Peanuts, maybe. I don't know.
So, but and even after having Heidi, it was hard. I was by myself. My husband was in the office. I had 2 kids. I was still working. I was taking consultations. I think I took 48 hours off from work. I had clients in peak week. There was a lot happening.
Yeah, you had clients on stage while you were having
literally in labor.
And they killed
and
it. And they all won.
They all won. Like, yeah, so that was great. But I think putting my situation in other people's perspective really helps because I'm like, listen, I didn't have any movement really for 17 weeks. And then beyond, really, I mean, I kind of would have some movement, but like Heidi was colicky. She was crying. She was crazy. She still is, but she was crazy. And I like to show some of my pictures postpartum after having her as examples. Like, you can do this again, whether you're on bed rest or you have, you work out 2 or 3 times a week. Your body has incredible muscle memory. And I think that's
what was going through my head as you were talking is that muscle memory.
Yes.
People forget that. Like once you build it, it comes back quicker.
It's incredible. I looked back, I think a couple weeks ago at my 8-month postpartum with Heidi. And I'm like, oh my God, like I did that. I can do it again.
And Jess, let me interrupt for just a second, not to interrupt, but we'll ask you again.
Let me interrupt, but not to interrupt.
Oh, and we forgot to do a check-in word for Jess,
we
too.
did.
We forgot to do a check-in word. So the check-in word is simply, and it's supposed to start the interview or the conversation, which is just what you're feeling in this moment. And I want you to take back maybe to the start of this interview, but what you're feeling in this moment, what you want to get out of this, whatever that word is that really describes your feeling.
I think vulnerable.
Okay.
Oh, I like that.
I like that.
I like that.
I like to share my vulnerability. People like it. I shared a picture on Instagram the other day. I felt like a whale, not gonna lie. And people loved I want to be that person that people can relate to.
And you've taken some heat for that.
It's okay.
And which is okay. And I mean,
I admire that though.
It is. And that's really where I wanted to go with this is that I know we'll ask you again at the end what your Instagram is, but tell people right now because I really want people to see what you post on Instagram. You are very upfront with this is how I look, this is how I feel, this is what I'm going through. And you're not putting it out there for attention, you're putting it out there for awareness.
I just want to share.
Yes.
Yeah, I just want to share.
Tell everybody what your Instagram handle is.
Jessica Quillian, just all one.
It's Quillian.
Thank you. Which is my maiden name. Keep that.
Yes.
My stage name.
Yes. So kind of, I wanted to jump back into the training side of things. And one of the things I wanted to know is whenever you have, an athlete you're working with, they're pregnant. And I know different doctors have different perspectives on this. Kind of where do we loop the doctor in and
everywhere?
Good. I mean, talk about that. Like what should people do if, whether they're competitors or not, they're going to have a baby, they're pregnant, like where should they include their doctor in the decision-making process? And
I think at the very beginning, I like to stress to the client to run everything by their doctor. Everything. Anything they're questioning, run by the doctor. I am not a doctor. I'm not here to give medical advice. I'm here to guide somebody. But I like to use my network. That's what that's there for. I have a PT that I work with. We have a hormone specialist we work with. And then every OB. If the OB even wants to get on the phone with me and talk through things, I'm willing to do that. But at the beginning, I always tell the client, let your doctor know what you're doing. Make sure that you're cleared to train at the beginning of pregnancy. And just fill the doctor in. And things as simple as supplements. So, there's the normal prenatal, but there are a couple of other things I recommend. But I always tell the client, ask the doctor. Always. Collagen, D3, fish oil, always ask your doctor. Magnesium, yeah.
And I think I love that you brought up the supplementation side of things, because I do think that this is a really important aspect of pregnancy and fitness and training and things like that. Because if you're going to somebody who doesn't specialize in working with people through, and they're recommending things, be very careful.
That's out of my scope of practice.
Right.
And that's why I always involve the doctor.
Right.
Always.
And you do, and this is what you do.
Yeah.
So, you're very knowledgeable on what most physicians do and don't, but you also want to make sure for that individual that this is still cleared.
There's a difference between encouraging a client to ask a question and giving them the guidance to do so, and telling them do this or don't do this, right?
Right.
And that's where we draw the line.
Yeah.
And I know you draw the line. I mean, that we're very, very clear on that.
And that's one of the big reasons I wanted to get my certification in pre and postnatal fitness, because I feel like it's such a sensitive time in a woman's life.
Yep.
And heaven forbid something came back on me and I didn't have that education behind me or that certification. That was a big worry to me. I want to have that behind my back, behind my name, not just some random that's like, I've gone through pregnancy and this is what I know from my experiences, which is fine, but I feel like it's important to have those credentials. Very important.
And I think, I don't know if you and I have talked about the 70-20-10 for development, but the 70-20-10 is just simply this. 70% of your development is experience.
Right.
20% of your development is mentoring. 10% is formal education.
Right.
And just knowing you are right in that 70-20-10.
Yeah.
And I hope that we do a good job at FitBody with the mentoring.
Oh, yeah.
And I think we've upped the game in that a lot.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
It's amazing.
And your experience. So you are fulfilling that developmental framework of 70-20-10.
And that takes me back to that IFBB status again, where I was thinking, I need this to be this type of coach. I need this for people to see me as a top level coach. No. My experiences, a little bit of my credentials, but my experiences are making me the coach that I want to be. And it's so cool, and I might be going off on a tangent here, but one of the things I absolutely have loved, I mean, when I started with FitBody Fusion, there were like 2 coaches, maybe 3, 4, like a handful.
Yeah.
You're an OG.
I'm an OG. It is so cool to see all the coaches we have in everyone's different areas of expertise, and we support each other through that. It's just, it's phenomenal. I just feel so blessed to be a part of a team like this.
And I think that's where we have really, this year has been a big development for us, is that real entry into a coaching collective where it's, yes, you have your assigned coach, but we are going to pull from different specialties to make sure that we are delivering to you, client, the best outcome.
And sometimes I'll even tell, like I told my client that the other week, I was like, the other day, I'm going to have some of the other coaches look at you. I want to get another eye on you as far as like your posing and where you are, how many weeks out. She loved it. She was all on board. And sometimes I used to get scared, like, oh, I should be the coach that knows it all and shouldn't be asking anybody else. I'm shooting on myself again. But, I always thought that about myself. I need to know everything. I don't need to be asking anybody questions, but that's how we learn and grow.
Right.
And I feel like that's been a big part of where I am now.
Right.
Well, I'm sorry, go ahead.
Well, no, I was just going to say, and for those listening that don't know, what we do is we do calls where we are all on the calls and we have an opportunity to bring up different clients. If we have somebody, we just want a second set of eyes, or we want to, kind of talk through what we're doing. And it's something we utilize that I feel like is helps us all grow.
I
because every one of us kind of comes from a little bit different perspective, a little bit different specialties. We have different educational backgrounds. We have different experiences. And so literally every single time I get off those calls, I've literally learned something and walked away with something.
I look forward to them every week. I'm like, yes.
And you're like one of those people that's like right up there.
Well, question.
I love it. Like, or you give feedback.
Yeah.
You're always asking really good questions, because that's really where we learn. And, there's no dumb questions. Like, and that's even with clients. And, I think when we speak on here, like we're speaking to people that are working with all kinds of different coaches. So I like to bring up things that, they can ask, like, what are the coach's credentials that they're working with? What are the kinds of experiences that they have, and are they consistently learning and growing? Because in this field of health and fitness, we're all learning all the time.
All the time.
I mean, there's new studies coming out. There's new, education coming out. There's still so many things we don't know, even from just a basic physiological and scientific standpoint. So, if a coach is not kind of on the cutting edge and staying up on those things and constantly learning and growing, then they're behind.
Well, which is why I'm pregnant again.
I mean, you go above and beyond to make sure you're doing your research.
I need to know more. I'm going to get pregnant again.
That's one way to get experience. Go ahead.
Oh, good.
Well, I was just going to say, as we talk about that, Jess, and you were saying question, and I don't know that everybody knows your approach to that, but it's an approach that honestly inspires me every day. And so when you say vulnerable, the other part of being vulnerable is being courageous, and you are probably one of the most courageous people I know, because you are so invested and so engaged. You ask any question, anytime, everywhere. No fear.
I used to be scared to ask questions.
You did.
I did.
And that's why I'm telling everybody that you just and well, let's talk about that. What got you over that? What got you over the hump to have that courage to just ask anything?
I'll give you a small background on this and where it kind of started. I was very introverted in school. You do in front of the class, you do the presentations and stuff. I would turn it on to do that, and then afterwards, I would never ask questions. I didn't want to look stupid. And then I got my first job out of college, and my boss at the time would teach me one thing and expect me to know it. And when I would ask questions, this person would tell me, you should know that. I already told you once, figure it out. And it just made me like want to just crawl into a hole and just never ask questions. And then I got another job in publishing, and it was like a woman-owned company. It was great. They kind of started that, they helped me get out of my shell and let me know that it was okay to ask questions. And that was a safe-ish space, but I didn't feel fully like comfortable. But once I came to FitBody Fusion, I still was in like that little bit of an introvert, stage. But the more that it was, Jamie would be like, it's okay. You can ask me questions. Call me. You're not bothering me. I'd always be like, I don't want to bother you. She's like, you're not bothering me. And so it took me a lot of, I don't know if failures is the right word to use, but mistakes maybe, to finally be like, it's okay to not know something and it's okay to ask questions. And then I think the more that the team has grown, and the more that I guess, feel like an OG, that I've been around for a while, and I'm more comfortable because I've been around for so long, that I want to be the example for other people and let other people see that it's okay to ask questions. Even though, I've been with FitBody Fusion forever. It's okay. I still don't know things. And so I think I've had to come to that realization on my own, and just kind of continue to push myself out of my comfort zone.
I admire that so much. Yes, and rapport, leadership training that we send our coaches through, and because we do know that growing as a person, when we're growing internally, that's where we are able to help whether it be our clients or our coworkers or whatever. And so I love that so much. Well, let's jump into, I know we talked a good amount about the training. Was there anything else before we jumped into the nutrition side of things, was there anything else you wanted to talk about on the training that you would say is specific to, maybe things not to do or things?
Yes, there are some things.
Let's
some things I didn't know then that I know now. You can train your core during pregnancy. There are safe ways to do it, and there are ways that or you should not do. So I like to teach my clients how to do that. There are specific exercises that I have built for different trimesters based off of the belly, the ab separation, the diastasis recti. So I like to teach clients, like, most pregnancies, you're going to have the ab separation. I would say like 100% of pregnancies, they pretty much separate. But there's a way to keep your core strong during pregnancy. I did not know this with my son. And in addition to keeping your core strong, it helps keep your pelvic floor strong. You'll hear sometimes people say, oh, I pee jumping after having kids. It's normal. It's not normal. And I had to learn that through going through PT after having my daughter. I learned a lot through PT. I learned a lot through my certification experience. And so I think that is something, especially pelvic floor health, that's something that's relatively new. And I love to teach my clients about that and how to breathe during exercises to engage the pelvic floor, to keep it strong. Because as you grow, the weight of the baby really puts a lot of weight on the pelvic floor. So a lot of the ways that I build programming engages the core and the pelvic floor, so that when they have the baby, it's not so hard on them as far as like rehabbing that postpartum, because there is some rehabbing of the pelvic floor and the core postpartum. So I like to include that in all trimesters in my training, because I feel like it's really, really important. That's probably like my number one thing is like pelvic floor health.
Well, it's funny you mentioned pelvic floor, because I think we talked about this previously, is we've added pelvic floor exercises to athletes' routines who have never had a child.
And you don't, exactly.
And they will always come back and say, I don't understand why you're adding this. I've never had a child. And it's like, yes, but you have pelvic floor weakness, which is why you're not able to pull your core in during your presentation. So I think, what you just said was so important, not just for pregnant ladies, but also for
even men.
Yeah, absolutely.
Even men.
Yeah.
It's
Pelvic
crazy.
floor is super important. And I love that Greg brought that up, because I know right now in our industry, everybody's so focused on vacuum training, which of course is great. And it's something we do recommend. That's not going to help with the little lower belly that's sometimes hard for women to hold, whether or not they've had a child, like Greg is saying. So working on that pelvic floor allows that control of not just the pelvic floor, but also the lower belly.
The lower belly, it's I could go on. I mean, and I still, like you said, we're always learning. I still have a lot to learn about the pelvic floor. And I'm like, this is my jam. I'm like ready to learn more. I have PT tomorrow. I'm like going to ask her more questions. I just love it. And PT, she is one of my my resources for clients too. So going back to like having your network of doctors and things like that, I always recommend to clients to see a pelvic floor physiotherapist after having birth. Do they all do it? No, because I think sometimes they just, I don't need that. I'm not peeing when I sneeze. It's like, but it's not necessarily always about that,
right?
So that's
but that is that is a factor. And I mean, even whether women have had children or not, as they get older, a lot of women have that weakness of the pelvic floor, and they start having a harder time controlling the their urine during if they're jumping or if they're laughing or whatever. So I mean, these are really important things. And then I know also when I've worked with women who've had children, the diastasis recti, sometimes where the abs don't come completely together, and I've sent them over to you for help because there are some things that can be done. So talk a little bit about, if after having the baby, that's something that's still an issue. I know not always can we repair it without surgery, but talk a little bit about that.
It's crazy because I didn't know any of this when I had my son, and I did have some clients that were postpartum, and I didn't know that it was diastasis recti. I didn't know how to look for that. I never had it. Oh, I mean, I guess I did, but I didn't. It healed on its own after having my son.
And sometimes it does.
Yeah. So I didn't. It wasn't.
Before you go too far, why don't you define diastasis recti? So I know that's an anatomical term, but let's just define it for the people who didn't know.
She did.
Did she?
It's the ab. It's your abs will separate as your belly grows. Your abs separate, like in your scientific term, linea alba. Is that the right way of saying it? So that will separate. And some women, I mean, I've come across women and they have like 4-finger gaps. Like they can literally put 4 fingers between
after having the baby.
And so when I have clients postpartum, even if they haven't just had a baby, they're 2 years postpartum, 3 years, 4 years, even 5+, sometimes they still have it. I have a self-assessment that I have them go through, and they will measure a little bit above the belly button, at the belly button, below the belly button, and they will, it's very detailed what I have them go through, as far as giving me the information back so I can determine the severity of it. But they'll let me know how many finger gaps that it is at those 3 spots. And then also the tautness of the skin inside the gap. So you're not gonna ever completely close the gap. That's just not how our body is. But one finger, I would say 1 finger or less is where it normally would be. But even some people who have that 1 finger gap, it's still not like taut in between that line. It's squishy. We don't want it squishy, we want it tight. So even if they're like, well, I have 1 finger gap all the way down, but how far can you push your finger down? And that's something I ask them to do too. And if they can push that finger down and it's squishy, we just got to still work on it. And then there's sometimes where I do have to refer them out because I can only do so much remotely, So that's when I'm like, okay, I need you to go get an internal pelvic floor examination. I need them to look at your core. I need someone to physically touch you and see you and then give me the information. Then I work with that PT to build something even more custom for that person. So that's kind of how I go about that.
That's incredible.
Yeah. And I've actually run into some people that have the diastasis recti that have never had kids.
Yeah.
So that actually can happen as well.
Yes, it can. Yeah. Men too. Men bodybuilders can get that.
Yeah.
Even men.
Yeah, we've seen that before.
The weight gain too, just regular men.
Yeah.
Weight gain, women, weight gain.
Yeah.
It's
really about the stretching.
It is.
It's typically what causes it. Yeah.
And then after postpartum, as we're talking about, it's those inner core muscles. You want those strong. It's not just, I'm going to do a bunch of crunches. It's like, no, there's more to it than just crunches. Crunches only do like the surface level. You got to get deep in there and really strengthen the inner core. So
I love that.
That's how I do all that. And then, when your core's strong, the pelvic floor goes hand in hand with that. And there are exercises that are focused on the core and the pelvic floor together. So there's so much.
There's a lot.
Yeah.
It's almost like this pregnant thing is a big deal.
Imagine that. Like I said, I'm still learning.
It's
like
only
there's still
bringing
so much.
a life into the world, it's only that.
Well, and I do feel like, as women, a lot of times we don't get, like, our doctors aren't giving us this information.
I have had zero. And I love my doctor. And when I had my daughter, she's like, all right, you're clear to train. That's it. I'm like, well, and me knowing what I know now, I'm like, they don't refer you to a pelvic floor physiotherapist. Some do. Some are getting to that point. Mine is like, yep, you're done. Go. You're fine.
And Jess, in defense of the doctors or explaining the doctors is, I don't think most doctors have a clear understanding of training versus competition level training.
Yeah, they have their,
Yeah, they think, they're going to the gym and they're going to do the stair stepper for 20 minutes and ride the bike or something, and you're cleared for that. But the kind of training that we're talking about for top level physique building, there's a little bit of difference.
Well, not even for that though. I think this really applies to even people that are just fitness enthusiasts or just like to stay in
lifestyle.
shape or do different types of sports. I feel like this really applies across the board, and maybe even more so in other areas besides bodybuilding. And endurance sports and other things.
Endurance for sure.
Yeah. So I mean, this really applies across the board to just about everybody.
Right.
And I know there's so much we wanted to cover on this episode, and we're going to do another episode with you. But before we sign off, I did want to just jump into the nutrition piece of it a little bit and talk about how you handle that, and how that might vary.
It depends.
We love that it depends.
I like to use some of my experiences. I have had clients who they have tracked their macros through the entire pregnancy, no food aversions, no issues. They are just like on top of it, good to go. I'm like, how do you do that?
Yeah.
In my mind, I'm like,
that's the rare one.
I'm like, how is this possible? Myself, I had food aversions first trimester. Most of my clients will have food aversions first trimester. It's figuring out where the client is. Some clients, I will tell them, okay, obviously protein is important when you're pregnant. Sometimes clients can't get a lot of protein in because it just is nasty first trimester. It just makes you want to puke. So I have to figure out what they like, what they don't like, make suggestions, see what clicks, kind of like what we were talking about before. Some clients are okay with hitting their protein goal and maybe hitting their calorie goal. Some clients like to just do a calorie goal. some clients just intuitively eat. I'm like, eat when you're hungry and focus on whole foods and hydration. It's just, everybody's so different. And from my experience, that's worked for me. More so intuitively eating, focusing a little bit on protein, but also I like to go back, and because it's that type A personality thinking, oh my God, I gotta track my weight gain. But this is a short window. And for me, I'm like, it's kind of like a break from like competing and macro tracking, and it's a mental break. And I like to also tell my clients, like, this is a time where you get to have a mental break from this. Because a lot of my pregnant clients are athletes, and they like that. I'm like, we're not gonna go ham, don't go out and have pizza and all this stuff, but focus on what you want your baby to have, the nutrients, the whole foods, things like that, things that feel good for you, things you can keep down. Some clients are even like, I can only have toast. I'm like, okay, that's okay. Sourdough toast, that's good for the gut. Can we work on sour? So it's just figuring out where the client is. I don't feel like there is a end all be all way that I do nutrition with clients. It's everybody's so different, and it's figuring out what works for them. And sometimes even when they go into like the second trimester, they're like, I can track again. I feel good. Third trimester, not so much. First trimester, not so much. So it's just figuring out where they are. And then a postpartum too. A lot of women are like, I'm forgetting to eat. And I did that too. I was like, how do people forget to eat? I never could understand that. When I had my daughter, I would forget to eat.
Wow.
And I'm like,
because at that point, sleep is the bigger priority.
Yeah. And then you're like running around. I'm like, I got 2 kids. I can't think straight. I'm forgetting to eat. Then that's when I'm like, just stay hydrated. If you want your milk supply up and all that stuff, stay hydrated. So it's so different from person to person. And I have learned that what works for me obviously doesn't always work for everybody else too. I just have to think outside of the box sometimes and just find what's going to work for that person.
I love that.
It's tough sometimes. But
yeah. I definitely think that's one of the harder parts is
the nutrition is so hard.
And it is so different. I know for me, my first pregnancy, I had some cravings, but not a lot of aversions. My second pregnancy, I was literally nauseous the whole entire time and just had to keep down what I could keep down.
Yeah.
So it's really interesting to hear you kind of go through this. And
Right.
I know you've seen like a lot of variance from one person to the other. And that's one thing you just don't know. And even if you've had a child before, the next pregnancy could be completely different.
Right.
So, and that each trimester could be different.
Right.
So being able to be a little flexible and not be overly hard on yourself.
That too,
is
yeah.
so important.
And that, if we have time, that goes, do we have time?
It's okay,
over?
finish. No,
Okay.
let's go. No, we want it. This is important.
That brings me into the weight gain.
Yes.
There's the healthy 25 to 35 pound weight gain. I don't stay there ever. I never have. My body just doesn't. It just doesn't. I don't know.
Well, some of it too, though, is how lean are you coming in?
Oh gosh, I was so lean when I got
if you're
pregnant
leaner
already.
coming into the prepregnancy,
Right.
your likelihood of you gaining more,
Yes.
obviously, than if you already had more body fat.
Right.
Right.
Yeah. And I have that is something that I tread lightly with my clients, because I feel like it's really hard when your body's changing and you're also gaining weight and there's only so much you can control. So I don't like to be like, all right, you've gained 30 pounds. We have 5 more to gain and then that's it. No, I don't go there with my clients. I'm like, it's okay. You're gaining a pound per week. It's okay. It's good for the baby. Your body's doing what it needs to do. Postpartum, we'll focus more on like dropping the weight, but you just keep focusing on what's going to make you feel good, getting some steps in. The weight thing is so sensitive to some clients. I mean, and I have clients that they gain the perfect amount of weight and I'm over here like, all right, well, she looks better than me, but I get in my head too about it. But I have to remind myself that this is, again, a temporary thing and my body is doing what my body needs to do for my baby. So.
And that's the objective, right?
Yeah.
The objective is a healthy birth.
Right.
That should be the objective. And so in that framework, it's always easy to talk about what the weight should be.
Right.
Well, the weight should be what it's going to be.
Yes.
And target that and the other aspects around that person's health and their and their mindset as well.
And we control what we can control.
Yeah.
It's an interesting.
It's an interesting time in life, right?
It is,
yeah.
and it's interesting to coach people through it. It's really exciting too when they have the baby. I'm like, oh my God, this is so exciting.
Yeah, what a cool result at the end of it
really
that you get to like
is.
be part of somebody's experience in creating life. Like that's amazing.
It really is. I had a client that just had a baby, I think 2 weeks ago, And she's like, I'm below this amount of weight. I feel so good. I can like walk without pain. I'm like, yes, I love that. So
awesome.
it's really, it's cool. It's scary at times, but it's also really rewarding to coach people through this phase of life.
Well, we have more to talk about.
Mm-hmm.
So we're going to do that in the follow-up episode for this. And I think what we'll talk about in the follow-up episode is just what are the lessons that you have learned through these 2 2/3 pregnancies?
Yeah.
2.65,
I'm not good at
whatever.
fractions
Okay,
and
but we can't say it full 3 on. I mean, but it is your
About
third
10 more
pregnancy,
weeks
so yeah.
ish.
Okay, we'll go somewhere with that.
Yeah.
So give us your checkout word for this particular conversation.
Let's see. What is my checkout word? Fulfilled.
Okay.
Ooh, I like
Wow.
it.
You hit some great words.
Yeah.
Some great words.
Yeah.
So everybody, thank you for tuning in. Remember the 3 B's: be safe, be good to yourself, and be good to each other. And we will come back with episode 2 of this pregnancy conversation with Miss Jessica Quillian. And remember to like and subscribe us on your favorite platform. And Jessica, give them your Instagram handle one more time.
Jessica Quillian, Quillian.
Thanks, Jess. We
Thanks,
really
Jess.
appreciate you being here.
We love you.
Love you.
Thank you for tuning in to FitBody Lifestyle. We hope today's episode has left you feeling motivated and equipped to tackle your fitness goals, business challenges, and the daily dance of life. Remember to value progress over perfection. Life's tough enough alone. Find the chosen family around you to help you along the way.
If you enjoyed today's episode, we'd really appreciate it if you would subscribe and leave us a review on your favorite streaming platform. And don't forget to follow us on Instagram at FitBody Fusion.